was fast. Thanks, John. My name is David Harper. I'm the Director General of Monitoring and Data Services within the Meteorological Service of Canada, which is a branch of Environment and Climate Change Canada. And I'm responsible for leading the collection and management of meteorological, climatological, hydrometric, and environmental data in support of water, weather, and climate services. In addition to my Director General duties at the Met Service, I also have the pleasure of serving as Canada's principal for the Group on Earth Observations, known as GEO. Today, we wanted to talk to you a bit about our new satellite Earth observation strategy, resourceful, resilient, and ready, which was released on January 2022. The next slide, please. Earth observation means a lot to the Canadian economy. We have a diverse space sector that contributes billions of dollars to Canada's GDP. And we know that there's a very large number of firms that work directly, Canadian firms that work directly in the satellite EO value chain, everything from manufacturing and operation of satellite EO systems to delivery and application of services under various business models. We recognize the need to ensure that we're continuing to foster growth in the Canadian market, that this is recognized, and to note that this is recognized both in Canada's space strategy as well as the new satellite Earth observation strategy. Satellite EO has become vital to many aspects of Canadian society, and we only anticipate the need for satellite EO data and tools to increase as emerging users recognize the value to our digital economy. Satellite EO provides fundamental intelligence that supports decision-making related to the environment, land, water, and air, and oceans for Mr. Haynes, natural resources, health, agriculture, infrastructure, and safety and security, among others. This information is transformed into value-added services, maps, models, forecasts, and other products that support us domestically as well as globally. Particularly important to us is the use of satellite EO to inform Canadians about climate change. That's been no more important than now. And extreme weather events associated with climate change, such as heat waves, wildfires, and floods. We're doing what we can and planning for the future to leverage Canada's satellite systems, receiving stations, computing capacity, and partnerships to ensure we're ready for the future. Next slide. The strategy certainly didn't appear overnight. We've been building towards it for a few years now. We started with the creation of a task force, followed by a national EO forum in late 2018. The forum laid the groundwork for many of the themes that have emerged. Canada's space strategy was then launched with Earth observation identified as a key pillar. Our work really kicked into high gear in late 2019 and throughout 2020. We formed working groups for each component of the EO value chain and assessed the readiness of initiatives that were underway, developed new ideas, and assessed whether these would be sufficient to meet our needs going into the future. Engaging with academia and industry was a really important component to this phase of our efforts. We held an academic EO forum, published an engagement paper seeking feedback on our initial thinking. We saw many of you at the industry engagement webinar and had many direct one-on-one conversations that were valuable in fine-tuning our strategy. In budget 2021, we were successful in putting satellite EO at the forefront with a budget chapter entitled Capitalizing on Space-Based Earth Observation. And I'll get into details about that in a few moments, but that was a big coup for us. These were the milestones that led to the strategy announcement in January 2022. Before we get into the details, I want to highlight what we heard from stakeholders. Next slide. There were common themes that emerged. We heard that it was important for us to facilitate access to open data, as well as regulatory reform. We heard that you were looking for analysis-ready products that can be incorporated into your businesses. We heard that strengthening international cooperation with key partners is a role that the federal government should focus on well into the future. And we also heard that you'd like to see alternative business models and long-term investments that follow through our vision and that we continue to build on Canadian strengths, such as RCM. Taking in all that feedback and recognizing the need to advance our capabilities, we focused on a principles-based approach. We developed the strategy recognizing that investment is required across the full value chain, the full EO value chain. Global leaders in satellite EO, the Europeans, US, among others, have taken a long-term forward-looking approach to investment planning across their value chains, and we want to do the same in Canada. This includes a whole of society approach, leveraging the expertise of academia and industry, a commitment to open data, and the development of partnerships, both domestically and internationally. It also considers complementarity with our ground infrastructure, our in-situ monitoring, as well as the end-to-end perspective, considering each component of the EO value chain. This means not only investing in satellite missions and data sources captured in the upstream part of the value chain, but also in the ground infrastructure and data storage, cataloging, and archiving in the midstream component, as well as the data processing capability and platforms for analytics in the delivery of value-added products and services in the downstream component of the value chain. This downstream portion of the value chain should also include investments in researchers, and data scientists, as well as our youth to fully capitalize on our EO data sources going forward. So here's the strategy, and hopefully you've seen the press release and had a chance to review it, but I'll provide a brief synopsis. As I mentioned, on January 20th, our three ministers, the ministers of ISED, Environment and Natural Resources Canada, released the strategy. This joint release really demonstrates a serious commitment to satellite EO within the federal government and in Canada, and the level of cooperation across government to put this in place, and not just among the leading three departments and ministers here, but across 17 departments and agencies that actually took an active role in developing the strategy. There are key four objectives in the strategy. One is to ensure that satellite Earth observation data is free, open, and accessible to maximize science innovation and economic development. Here we need to foster the development of easy-to-use data access and analytics platforms for industry, academia, and government to work collaboratively. We need to modernize data policies to reduce barriers to data access, provide incentives for innovation and job creation, and support early stage startups and services. In terms of creating the right conditions for the sector to thrive, it's about supporting R&D programs to help mature technology capability, particularly important for startups and SMEs. We know that there's a lot of open competition to drive innovation. The second objective is to harness satellite EO to tackle climate change, and this was also identified in the space strategy. We need to enhance and broaden our monitoring and forecasting abilities to protect Canadians from future climate and health crises. It's been recognized that half of the essential climate variables can only be observed through space. We want to build on our Canadian heritage and increase access to global data sets to study issues that matter most to Canadians, the Arctic, air quality, water management, forest fires. Measuring environmental and health indicators also requires an ability to rapidly detect changes and identify their causes and consequences. Investments in these data analytics and in high resolution rapid revisit imagery are required to monitor Canada's changing landmass and coastlines to better predict and respond to environmental changes occurring as part of climate change. The third objective is to strengthen the delivery of critical services to keep Canadians healthy, safe, and informed. Here, obviously, we want to avoid disruption in services. This is vital, that are vital to the Canadian economy, such as infrastructure monitoring, emergency response, and disaster risk reduction, by ensuring the resilience in our data reception infrastructure. Earth observation data has become fairly integral to a number of federal government departments. Today, there are over 60 services in government that depend on this data, including in critical areas such as maritime domain awareness, ice mapping, climate change, disaster relief, health, and more. So it's beginning to get increasingly important that we don't have gaps in our data sources. The final objective is to inspire satellite EO skills and capacity development for the next generation. We need to strengthen skills development by focusing on improving awareness and understanding of satellite EO's potential. We can do this by establishing inclusive training opportunities and partnerships that allow all Canadians to thrive. We also recognize the need to partner with Indigenous and Northern communities to deliver locally driven solutions through co-development of satellite EO solutions integrated with traditional knowledge. We also want to learn from past experience, and we need to consider supporting skills development early on when associated with missions. The best data is useless if we can't interpret it or understand it easily. We need hands-on training and education opportunities within different communities. Next slide, please. It's still early days in our efforts, of course. We've identified here in this table a few examples of the steps that we're taking to achieve those objectives. This wasn't necessarily part of the news release associated with the release of the strategy, but here are some of the things we're doing right now. We're currently reviewing the Remote Sensing Space Systems Act. We're renegotiating or negotiating a Canada Copernicus data sharing agreement. We've recently renewed the MOU with EUMETSAT this past fall to ensure that we're collaborating on EO data for meteorological needs, as well as data analytics. We're looking at requirements analysis and feasibility of developing a collaborative analytics platform known as Digital Earth Canada. That would be the digital meeting place for government, industry, and academia. And I'm sure you've all heard of the government's recent investment of $20 million in GHGSat to support the use of satellite EO and GHG monitoring. This is to help support climate change, of course. We're also investigating in a wide range of missions and data acquisition options directly linked to climate change, including wildfire sat, the Arctic Observing Mission, Canada's contribution to NASA's atmosphere observing system, and the terrestrial snowmass mission. We're well underway to implementing Budget 2021 investments and updating our critical ground receiving infrastructure. So this is Éric's infrastructure to receive RCM and other data, and infrastructure I'm responsible for receiving POE's meteorological information. And we've also received money to invest in the next generation of SAR observations, and this is underway. So in total, we received $90 million in Budget 2021 to capitalize on Earth observation. So this was it's a big step. That's over $110 million investment in 2021 in satellite EO, thanks to in part the large efforts of the community last year. In January, the release of the strategy, with the release of the strategy, Smart Earth also announced $8 million for SMEs to further exploit EO data and to develop new and innovative services. On the academic side of things, we continue to fund efforts through the Earth System Data and Analysis Grant. So we're putting things there. There's lots of things going on. We're continuing. All of these can be meshed and are tied closely with the objectives within the strategy. Going forward, next slide, we're not stopping at the strategy. Frankly, it's just the beginning. Our efforts are now focused on codifying the process to ensure that there's continued coordinated investment in EO. We're developing an implementation plan, kind of a companion document with the strategy. That will provide an environmental scan of the current landscape, capture investments and activities to support our strategy's objectives, and identify gaps in growth areas. One of the things that we want to make sure that is transparent our activities are transparent to decision makers, and they know when the key decision points are that are required for future investment in EO. That hasn't always been readily apparent to decision makers, but we want to provide them with the whole landscape so that we've got that long-term investment planning, that principle of long-term investment planning in place. So as we go forward, we can expect an ongoing rolling review of requirements, engagement of industry, academia, government, and the public in feeding into our investment plans related to EO, and a continuous scan of new technologies and new commercial services and data that the government and Canadian industry and academia can leverage to support value-added decision-making, business, and our success as a nation. So with that, I think there's one more thing. There's the next opportunity to hear from you, actually, is we're planning the next National EO Forum. Éric may be able to speak a bit to this, but it's being planned for early fall. Hopefully this won't be a virtual event, and hopefully folks will be able to attend in person, discuss the strategy and discuss the activities that we have currently underway, and discuss where there are some gaps and needs for the future to help influence where we invest money. With that, thank you for listening, and we'll get into some questions and answers with the rest of the panel. Actually, I'll turn it over to Éric. And Éric, if they want to add anything to what I said.
Yeah, maybe if we can, if I can add just a few comments here. Thanks, Dave. Good, well done. I think although we've made significant progress in raising the priority and the visibility of EO, and as you presented by David, it's been long in the making for us to do that. It's tremendous work. But we are cognizant. We realize that in the end, it means little if we are not able to follow up with sustained investment. Not just within government, but with industry and in academia, and we are well aware of that, right? However, I know when you look at the strategy, I probably some would have liked to see a definitive list of the upcoming investment. And however, we should not underestimate the importance of the role that this strategy plays, how it raises awareness around the need for those sustainable investment, and the important role that such a strategy plays on a policy level in the federal government, to prepare central agency and increase the chances of success in budget processes and ask, right? It is a critical piece to show that we are organized, we have a strategy over long term, that this is a canvas for investment, and we have done our homeworks, right? It should not be underestimated. The list itself, of the specific investments, the strategy was not intended for that. However, we know that this has to come now, right? However, this priority setting of the needs that follow that strategy framework and canvas, it can't be set in stone. So it can be part of the strategy, but it needs to be adapting to priority changes, to the evolving economic conditions, also to the evolution of technology. So that is where we are now. So we need those specific, as David mentioned, we need this engagement now, those specific ideas, and this is an evergreen process. This is not a one-time thing. The strategy is over many years, and this needs to happen throughout those years, repeatedly, iteratively, specific ideas on what investment would yield the most benefits for our economy, for our sector, and for also the government priority. So now, and at times, we can't, as government, always be fully sharing what we have in the making. Given sometimes there's specific periods in the year. Some of you are familiar with that our cabinet confidence, a budget is being prepared, and when that happens, we are under that. Those conditions where we can't share what's going to cabinet. But there are periods as well where we are not under those conditions, and we can have those free an open conversation that actually helps to craft this investment plan. So looking forward for in the upcoming months for those fruitful engagement sessions with all of you. Maybe Eric, you wanna add?
Yeah, just a few things. And Éric, thank you. You highlighted the importance of takeaways from the presentation that David delivered. We're constantly in the planning, in the recommendation mode to government for investments, and we want to do continuous engagement. So we need to basically have this interaction. And actually, that's one of the things that we want to discuss on the way to the EO Forum, is how best to get you involved constantly, like to get this continuous engagement. We don't want to restart something every 5 years and start something new and take starts from scratch. We want to keep this rolling wave of requirements, rolling catalog of needs that we have for Canada, as David mentioned in the last slide. So in order to do that, we do have a vision that's end to end. So we want to get you involved, and we want to leverage the private sector, commercial private sector, academia, as well as public sector, different levels, different layers of the public sector. So you've heard before this presentation, you've heard about Chorus, an example of a commercial initiative that's going forward. That is, the future is going to be more about how private, public, and academic sector are working together to try to, to meet Canada's needs in the future. Of course, there's going to be challenges, and those we need to talk about. We need to exchange. One of such challenges is data policy. You probably, most of you probably know that there's a question of open government, open data, but how does that translate into commercial data that's available? You don't want to have everything open, so there's different models that we can look at in order to make sure that these different sources of data that benefit for everybody, and in different ways. So we need to have your ideas on how to do this and how to combine forces. So those are basically themes that we can build on in terms of the National EO Forum. The actual forum we're planning for the fall, but there's going to be the road to the EO Forum. So expect that we will call on you for engagement to get all of us thinking and prepare for productive exchanges in the fall. And if you're doubting, the benefit of that kind of exchange, and I do wish for a in-person event as well. What we've achieved with the increased coordination, increased mobilization of all the departments of all the federal government has been a result of the National EO Forum in 2018. We're reaping the products, the outputs, the outcomes of those discussions that we had way back when. So looking forward to having more discussions about this. And now, I guess, to questions.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for that. That's very exciting. A question that popped up into my head. You're looking for engagement from the sector. That's fantastic. There was a big environmental scan in 2013 of the sector. It's been a while since we've seen regular engagement. I participated in that. How, for those in the audience who are like, yeah, I want to get involved, how do I engage on this? Is there a list? Is there somebody they email so that they know about the forum and the road to the forum?
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Jonathan. We do have distribution lists that we know of. But if there's anybody that wants to be on that list, invited or at least considered for the EO forum, certainly there's ways. Just contact the space agency. I was going to say you can send me an email. I'll just redistribute it to the proper office that coordinates all of this. It's really, the way that we are engaging currently is, like you said, it's in huge chunks. We want to address, maybe there's a different way to do this. I keep going back to the way that software updates, to your favorite games or favorite intelligent phone, happens. It's not always big, huge updates to the version. You have gradual updates as well. And then when there's enough to warrant a new complete version, then that's the way you go. So is there a way to think in terms of EO needs and requirements in this fashion? Is there a way for us to structure an approach that basically people can, they have I'm going to say a mailbox, but they have a contact, they have ways to submit new needs, new observational needs, or new data stream that they feel is needed for Canada.
Thank you. We've got engagement coming in from the audience, so I'm just going to read some of the questions. The first one I'm going to go to is from Jeff Zeiss. What are the criteria for deciding what the federal government funds and undertakes and what is left to the private sector? And that's for anyone on the panel.
I'll give it a kick at this. For me, it's not that black and white as government versus private industry. Even in our Government of Canada initiatives, there's a significant amount of funds that are directed to that. There's a priority setting exercise, as I mentioned before, and as I said, it depends on a certain number of priorities of government, where this government is currently going. And I don't, decide that, the political people do, right? Like, this government has a specific agenda. If you read all of the mandate letters of the government, where this government is going, and that actually influences what we will be called upon. Some of the times we are directed by those ministers and those mandate letter commitment to actually do certain things. And then we actually look into this and say, well, in some of them, EO is the most efficient way to actually deliver on this. And then we'll craft an investment plan that we send back, right? And sometimes part of those investment plans, there are an industry component. If you look at the last budget, 2021, the money that was, the government wanted to have some infrastructure investment, given the economic situation, led by the pandemic. So the ask was for that kind of stuff. So the infrastructure renewal that we've been funding for, there's a fair chunk, if not the majority, likely the majority of those investment are for capital that's going through contracts. There's consulting, there's operations. So there's a lot of money that's going through to the industry, even if it's labeled as a government investment. Now, after that, maybe Éric can talk about the specific programs where money is specifically earmarked for industry.
Thank you. David, did you want to get in on
that?
Yeah,
it's a good question, and I think Éric got it right. When it comes down, it's value for taxpayer dollars, but there's many lenses on top of that. So how are the priorities served? Who's collaborating? Is it Canadian industry as well? I just want to emphasize, through this strategy, we really recognize that there's investments have to be made up and down the entire EO value chain, and that our will, I think, is really to invest in the Canadian private sector, bring them along as partners along with the academia. So in terms of it weighing into how we approach our investments, it's very strong. investment in the
Fantastic.
private sector.
If I can, Jonathan, just
Yeah.
to add, when I heard the question, it sounded as though government was deciding what was left for private sector. But in EO currently, what we're seeing is the opposite. There's a wave, there's a beginning of commercial initiatives, playing a role in Earth observation. So then, basically, as a rule of thumb, the government gets involved with initiatives that are so high risk or for public good, as my colleagues have alluded to. But there's also a desire to leave room for what are the startups and the growing commercial EO field, and we can take advantage of that and focus on other areas where it's high risk. And those are the principles that we're putting forward in determining how we will succeed after RCM. What will be the framework after RCM.
Thank you. Well, we've got a lot of engagement. I'm going to get to the next question. Something pretty specific, I think, touching on imagery. Is part of the vision to have freely available 50 centimeter or better ortho imagery available across the country? And if so, when can we get our hands on it? That's for anyone who on the panel who can answer that.
Éric, you want to go for that one?
Well, it's always a question of what are the applications that we're trying to support. So the 50 centimeter, and I'm not going to take this as specific to SAR or optical, as overall, resolution is linked to the applications that we're trying to do. So that's why the demand should be about what observational need we have, what are the applications. Then that derives what kind of sensors, what kind of resolution, and that would be my general answer to that. I don't know if Éric, you want to touch more on the optical. I know there's plenty of needs.
Maybe my sense is that, yes,
Okay.
there's great interest in having national coverage of imagery. Without a doubt, it'll support change detection, so many applications, and it'll update our foundational layers that Éric has in terms of geobase, roads, rivers, infrastructure, you name it. So this is something that we're taking a very serious look at. When it will be available and is more difficult to say. It's in the sense of getting back to what Éric says, we have to buy something that meets the requirements of multiple departments and agencies and drive it to be open, which is a very complex thing to do within government. But that said, we're completely looking at the feasibility of that.
Thank you. We've got a question with respect to the planned National EO Forum 2022. Although in person is preferable, please make sure that it will also be accessible online as well as a hybrid event. I guess this isn't a question. This is an ask.
I wonder if Éric wanted to comment on the imagery. I think so, because that's.
Oh, sorry.
No, well, I'll answer to this one first. Yeah, I think that moving forward, and I want to commit for everybody, but I think that's going to be the new standard, where events and conferences are going to be a mix of both. We're never going to go back to the 100% just face-to-face, no technology come in to allow people to, we've seen the benefits of that kind of technology and how we can actually engage so much broadly, right? So I'm not too concerned by that. And on the imagery front, right, I think the guys have answered it properly. And it's complicated. Well, the actual pressure on those like us that are trying to get that ball rolling is increasing or exponential, right? We know the needs are there. There is within the government, but also from outside. How can we actually put our hands on that? Like the question was saying, yes. However, making sure that we do that and allow a level playing field for the industry that are providing that, and the whole open data, the licensing of that, it is complicated, and the cycle in a year when we can actually establish something this big through procurement it's challenging, right? We're trying. So and I'm sure that if we can get the ball rolling, maybe at first to say, they picked this platform rather than this other one, but if we can get the ball rolling, I think there's going to be enough demand, right? So to actually be able to go to a multiple platform and have this this funding distributed a little more equally throughout the community. I would think so. Kind of bear with us, and we're knock on wood that we were able to pull it off within the financial cycles that we're in.
Thank you. We've got a question in from GeoGuy. He remarks, very interesting strategy that will no doubt engage most of the existing geospatial community, but does your strategy include ways to engage the next generation and get them involved or interested at a much younger age?
I would take that. I mean, we're here at GeoIgnite. I would challenge you, maybe, John, to have a youth session where we bring in some younger Canadians in, where we can bring together us to inform them of the strategy and help out. You've got a great forum here. That's possibly a way to do that. But certainly that was one of the underlying objectives of the strategies, to engage youth, make sure they're plugged into EO, learn how to capitalize on the data and get them interested and involved, because it's such a burgeoning part of our digital economy. So yes, we want to do that. Do we have specific plans right now? We don't, I don't think, but it's something that's in the works. And as I said, John, you can help there too.
Yeah, I think that the RCGS, the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, is a good partner and things like that. We at GoGeomatics, leading up to this event, we email a lot of geomatics programs, geography programs. We're on the Canadian Association of Geographers list. It's a free event. There's a lot of competition for students' time in the middle of the day. We know that there's a lot of students in the audience, but we can always do better. But I think it's a great idea, and we'd love to be supporting that. So thanks. There's a question from Mark. He's got a specific question. Are we going to see funding for Canadian government-led EO satellites beyond wildfire sat, possible RCM follow-on? And that's for, again, anyone on the panel who feels comfortable.
I can take that question because we're talking satellites precisely. And thank you for the question, Mark. I think it's not, it's not a question of will we see. I think what you're maybe asking is when, how fast. And I think that Éric has described the process that we have to go through, that basically is guiding how and how fast how successful we are. Our job, or the job of the three of us together, is basically to bring together proposals, bring together recommendations. But there's all kinds of considerations that going forward and as to when, and we cannot presume when government will decide to go in one direction or another, how the private sector is going to evolve and basically change the positioning of the government. But there was one slide that David showed, which was highlighting quite a few investigations that we are. You mentioned wildfire sat. There was also the successor to RCM. But there are missions like the Arctic that were interested in weather and air quality. There's a terrestrial snow mass mission, basically, that's tied into water management, understanding how much snow there is, because you can't just afford to have people going across the country and doing as much surveying measurements as a satellite would. So these are just examples of investments that we're preparing. So we're investigating, and that's the process. Then after that, it becomes a question of So what's the pull in order for these to be enacted, to be implemented?
Thank you. We've got a question from Gordon Plunkett on data policy. He asks, data policy is important to the success of the EO strategy. Is the default data position analysis ready, accessible, open and free to use outside the government? Who's best for that one? Éric, Mr. Loubier or Mr. Laliberté?
Well, I think both of us have a role to play. Éric, you want to take it first?
I would have said Mr. Harper, but I'll kick at it. I think that's always, Gordon, that's always the objective, right? Can we actually always deliver on that? No, right? Like the open data policy, rather it be for EO or for our other data sets, geospatial, right? That's kind of what we're targeting. Can it always be done? No, but this is always a target. A little more challenging with imagery because there's the companies that provide this imagery, they have a business model, right? So I can't, purchasing an image that I'm going to keep to myself for a specific purpose, and then that same imagery that I'm putting up on the internet or on my website for consumption download, it's two different pricing structures. So we have to strike that balance between the two, and sometimes we're striving to get to that level where there's at least a basis of imagery that can be leveraged by anyone for any purpose. Right? Is it always the most current, the most up to date? That's what we're trying to figure out. Where is that balance point that it's sustainable financially for those that are putting the money in, and it is also it doesn't jeopardize the business model of the company providing it.
And if I can add, there is the Open Government Directive. So as Éric mentions, we tend towards that. There's also the RSSA or Remote Sensing Space System Act that govern what can be shared and what cannot be shared openly. So in one of the slides that David showed, we mentioned the regulatory review. So that's part of the dynamic, that's part of the challenges. But to put a bright side to all of this, when we talk about analysis ready, we're definitely moving towards that, not only in Canada, but internationally. So I represent Canada on the Committee on Earth Observation Satellite, and we do have a working group that's looking exactly at making sure that we have analysis ready data.
Fantastic, thank you. There is a very interesting detailed question from Denny Haynes. I am going to focus on the question portion for the audience. So the question is, what is your respective views and strategy on the importance and relevancy of Canada's hydrospatial domain, scope and context with respect to satellite, earth, and water observation in Canada?
Maybe, well, so I saw your previous message, Denny, and it always comes down to semantics. When I see E with a capital Earth, it's one planet for me, including 70% of the ocean. So I don't know that we would change it to Earth and water, Earth and oceans observation, but I take your point that focus on the oceans is important. Certainly with RCM, with respect to the meteorological service, we're using, what was the percentage yesterday? A massive amount of RCM data to monitor ice. We're leveraging it to monitor our coastlines. We're using it to monitor flood inundations. So that's just with RCM. We're working with NASA on the SWAT mission as well. Water and ocean topography. So we're doing science there. So we're actually investigating and investing a lot with respect to water in this country from a space-based vantage point, coupled with a massive network of in situ monitoring stations as well. So we think we're addressing water quite well.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Denis, I do recognize your question. However, the importance, I think, and you and I know because we've been at this before in your previous role at, bridging that land and water, those two worlds that have been operating in silo. It is still a challenge today, and although we are doing quite a bit, right, as David mentioned, there is, for those who know, we've been funded as well for flood mapping and monitoring the impact of flood. That includes some dedicated efforts towards the coastal change, and also we're doing some work versus estimation of water available in Canada from coast to coast, the water regime and stuff. So those are all water related. But to say that these two worlds are well integrated, I recognize that. Yet there's still a little ways to go, but I think we're on the right path to do that.
Yeah, you're right. We are on the right track, and although there's 3 departments represented here, it's more than 17 departments. I think we just 17 is the last number that I had, but we're growing, and DFO is part of our team. And so therefore their observational need, their vision for the future, even including blue economy, these are all part of our consideration when we're looking at the implementation and the plans going forward. David mentioned the surface water and ocean topography. That's a mission that will launch at the end of 2022. And it's going to do a lot of surveying of our water bodies. But what we'd like to do also is to expand the capabilities, meaning expand the way that we're going to use the data. And in order to do that, we have the CSA has a program that was identified, the Smart Earth program, utilitaire en français. And basically, we use that program to encourage, to develop different ways to apply space data. And one of the big examples is the Smart Whales Challenge that was issued, that is being financed. That is basically looking at the North Atlantic right whale and its vulnerabilities, and how can we do better at protecting it, and as well as protecting, the shipping lanes and everything that has to do with water. So we do make applications. We can make calls specific to oceans sometimes. So it's just let's hear the ideas, and I think like Éric was saying, we have a better job to do at integrating both land and maritime, but we're on the right track.
Thanks. So we're a little over our time. There's a question here about the National EO Forum that I think that is important. Someone says they're looking forward to the planned National EO Forum. Is it an invite only, or will it be posted on places like GoGeomatics?
I don't think we had decided on that. And if we're making it hybrid, I think this allows for a different approach. So I'll definitely take the comment for consideration. I think in the past, what we did, we had to restrict the number of people in terms of the facilities, but like the other question or comment was made of making this a hybrid, it allows for a different approach. So we'll be sure to come out soon with news on that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to slip one last question in from Jeff. Does the federal government have plans to support mapping underground infrastructure, including utilities? Mr. Loubier, or probably your area more than anyone, I think.
Yes and no. Right now, the honest answer for the time being, right now, this is not in our short-term objective, at least. That's for sure.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to give you each a moment if you'd like to share a final thought with the conference before we say goodbye. And I give you my thanks. So yeah, any final words?
Nothing else than a big thank you to all of those who sat here and listened to us and engaged with us. Thank you very much. Looking forward to more engagement.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And you know what we're achieving is because of collaboration between all of us. So it's the way forward.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
To echo my colleagues, and thank you, Jonathan, for organizing the panel. It gives us a chance to communicate what we've been doing in this space. We're look forward to continued engagement with everyone and keep moving forward.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was fantastic. Thanks for sharing your work and the benefits of Earth observation that we're looking forward to for the future of all Canadians. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the second day of GeoIgnite. We're going to be back tomorrow. We've got a keynote with Sanjay he's the CEO and founder of Geospatial World. He's going to be giving a keynote on the state of the geospatial industry globally. So that's going to be very interesting. We've also got a very interesting panel at the end of the day on the importance of diversity views, diversity leadership, perspectives when it comes to climate change. So I hope that you join us again tomorrow. On behalf of our sponsors, the team, the community, thank you all very much. And thank you to the Director Generals for sharing their time generously with us.